Coleman, me, Keyshawn Johnson, Charlie Arno in for Max, Molly, and Stephen A. on First Take. We got a weekend barbecue for you, starting with the Milwaukee Bucks, up 3-2 in their series of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Atlanta Hawks. Is this series over? We'll dive into that. Speaking of diving into somebody, Brook Lopez made this man look smart for the first time in his life. We're definitely going to dive into that. And we got Vince Carter, Vince Sandy joining the barbecue too to kill your holiday weekend. Only good is going to come out of that. It is time for First Take, and that time is now.
No Trae Young for the Hawks, no Giannis for the Bucks.
It's East Conference Finals. There's no excuses. It doesn't matter whoever's playing, who's not playing. You got to fight through and win.
Caught and flushed by Brook Lopez. They have no answer for Lopez.
Off to Bobby Portis. Slam dunk.
Portis has come up big. The fans love him here.
Middleton spins, gets deep. What a move.
I thought we just did a great job of playing together. And when everyone's scoring, everyone's doing their thing, that's tough for the defense.
Hello, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to First Take. It's Friday. We made it. I'm Charlie Arno, joined by Keyshawn Johnson. We also have Freddie Coleman joining us. How's everybody feeling this morning?
We're good.
Not bad. I'm good. I'm ready to get the weekend going.
Me too. I got a barbecue at the Coleman household waiting for me, man. I'm all set.
Okay, any like dish that really sets itself
grilled
apart?
pork chops. You put grilled pork chops and grilled chicken, then that's going to be a good barbecue with some fixings next to it. So that's what we got going on this weekend.
So, Freddie, on my show this morning, I was trying to get them to explain to me the difference between a grilling and a barbecue. I from the West Coast, we call it barbecue.
Right.
People on the East Coast call it cookouts and grilling, and I'm trying to understand the difference.
There's
I've never
no
heard
difference.
of grilling.
Yeah, there's no difference. If you're outdoors and you're cooking, it's all good. So there's no difference. It's a whole West Coast, East Coast, South, North thing. That's all that is. It's the same thing.
Okay.
All right, well, you know who was eating good last night? The Milwaukee Bucks. Who would step up in Giannis' absence in Game 5? Everybody. Brook Lopez throwing it back to his big man days on the Nets, towering inside the paint, dominating for a playoff career high, 33 points on 14 of 18 shooting. Meanwhile, Bobby Portis Jr., Chris Middleton, and Drew Holiday finished with 22, 25, and 26 points respectively. A hot start, and Bucks in front the whole way, 123-112 the final, with Milwaukee now one game away from the finals.
How much more did you put on yourself to make sure you guys
I did it. I know a lot of people expect me to do that. For me, it's just, just figuring out the game, playing within the game, finding ways to get myself involved, but also others. Knowing that, the focal point is going to be me a lot more. And Drew also. I think Drew did a great job of, setting the tone first. He got himself going. He got other guys involved, Brook, Bobby. But then myself, I just try to, pick my spots, find where I can attack and be aggressive and take advantage.
It is a must-win game for us. That's what it comes down to. That's what this game means if you drop it, as we did tonight. And it's a must-win for us. It's a one-game season for us. So we know what we have to do. And, we got to get back home and get ourselves ready to take care of business at home. Expect us to respond. It's do or die now.
And with everybody going off for Milwaukee, their starting five stepped up and outscored the Hawks' starting five by 33 points, including a plus 30 advantage in the paint. And even without Giannis, the Bucks ended up out-rebounding the Hawks by 19. Bobby Portis, who started in Giannis' place, had 22 points and 8 rebounds, a playoff career high. I mean, honestly, last night I felt like Oprah. I'm like, you get points, you get points, you get points. 4 of the 5 starters had 22 points or more last night for the Bucks, so that's something to be proud of. So, Freddie, let's start with you here. Should this series be over at this point?
I wanted to go Game 7, but I think it's going to end in 6 games because the Milwaukee Bucks, what they were able to do last night, and I don't want to be that prisoner of the moment, but if they play like that, the Atlanta Hawks have no chance of beating them, especially when we don't believe that Trae Young, at least I don't believe that Trae Young is going to be there for Game 6. He tried to give it a go before Game 5. That ankle is just not responding. That foot is just not responding. But this Milwaukee Bucks team, they played with an attitude last night. And here's something else why I believe this is going to be over in 6. There's that team called the Phoenix Suns that is getting more than enough rest, once again waiting for another opponent. We saw how that worked for them against the Denver Nuggets when they closed out the Lakers. We saw how that worked for them against the Los Angeles Clippers when they closed out the Denver Nuggets. They did not fool around by allowing the Clippers to push them to a Game 7. if you are the Atlanta Hawks and you know you play like that, even without Giannis, you're going to make this series over. And I think they're going to do it again on the road. Of course, it's a lot more comfort playing at home, but now going on the road and knowing that, man, if we get into a game 7, a winner take all, even if we win that, we're going to be mentally and physically worn out, and playing a team in Phoenix that is hot right now, that is mentally and physically rested. If you're the Atlanta Hawks, you can't fool around, and they know that in the game 6, but I think you're the Milwaukee Bucks, you really can't fool around. That's why I think this series is going to be over in 6. I want a game 7 because I love game 7s, but I think Milwaukee Bucks know that if we fool around, we may win this series, but we may not win the championship that we want to get to, and I think that's why they're going to put it away in 6 when Saturday night rolls around.
If you're the Milwaukee Bucks, Freddie, and you're looking ahead to an NBA final against the Phoenix Suns, you've already lost because you're not paying attention to the Atlanta Hawks going home in their own stadium. You know how jacked up Atlanta gonna be, whether Trae Young plays or not. They beat the Milwaukee Bucks without Trae Young in Game 4 at home when they had their top dog. I can't see no way possible that the Milwaukee Bucks can duplicate what they did last night in Game 5 again in Game 6 with all 4 of those guys and 5 of those guys stepping up to the plate. I can't see why Brook Lopez all of a sudden has 30-plus points. Yeah, Middleton may do well, but do you expect Jrue Holiday to drop 25 points to set the tone again? Do you expect for Bobby Portis to play the way that he did on the road in Atlanta against the Atlanta Hawks team led by Nate McMillan, who's going to make that 48-hour adjustment? He's going to out-coach Coach Bud this time around. Look, the smart thing that Milwaukee did in this game is they pounded the ball down low. But we haven't seen them do that on a consistent basis. So there's nothing there that tells me that the series is over. It's going to go to Game 7. It's going back to Milwaukee. And again, if the Bucks are looking ahead to the Suns, they've already lost because they lost the team that's in front of them, paying attention to a team that can potentially have rest. Makes no sense at all.
I think they should be looking ahead because if you're the Milwaukee Bucks, why are you going to extend yourself when you can put an opponent away? Because the ultimate goal is to win a championship. And I know you got to go things in incremental steps. I clearly understand where you're coming from, Keyshawn. But if you're the Milwaukee Bucks, you got to say this, we got to put this team away in Game 6. Of course, no one's expecting Bobby Portis to have the Bobby Portis experience again like we saw in Game 5, what he was able to do for the Milwaukee Bucks. And by the way, Brook Lopez made me look pretty smart. I said yesterday the most important player was Brook Lopez of Milwaukee Bucks. He had 33 points. For the first time in Freddie Coleman's life, he was smarter than the average Bear. So I'm not expecting that to happen in a Game 6. But I'm also not expecting that the Atlanta Hawks are going to be able to hopefully shoot the ball better in that Game 6. Milwaukee's defense has been really, really good. Now, Bogdanovich has been able to knock down shots. But Kevin Huerter, he's in the funk right now. John Collins, he's in the funk right now. Clint Capella had his soul taken away from him last night by Brook Lopez. That's not going to happen again, but I'm not expecting that the Bucks are going to come down that far and that the Hawks are going to raise their game that much up into Game 6.
Everything you just said, it's not going to happen. You don't expect for Brook Lopez to do this. You don't expect for them to do that. Then how are they going to win in Atlanta? Because I expect for the Atlanta Falcons to go back to the drawing board, make the necessary adjustments for Game 5. What did I say? The Falcons? I don't.
I'm in NFL mode too.
This is not the football team.
The Falcons are making the adjustments.
Key, I'm in NFL mode too.
But when you think about it, I'm expecting the Hawks to go back to the drawing board with Nate McMillan and turn things around. You can't expect for them to play the same way, fall asleep at the wheel like they did in Milwaukee. I just don't see it in Atlanta, in a home stadium. I expected Milwaukee to play well. Mm-hmm. I didn't expect for some of the players to play as well as they did at home, but we all know that Chris Middleton had phenomenal games at home and out on the road. They're going back on the road again, and it's important, much like Nate McMillan said. It's a win or go home moment, and whenever you have a win or go home moment, that team at home usually rises to the occasion. The Milwaukee Bucks really have not blown out the Atlanta Hawks up until last night. Everything, for the most part, has been tight. They got away with one last night in terms of a blowout. For whatever reason, the Hawks didn't come to the party, but I anticipate that they come to the party again when they play at home in Atlanta and not in Falcon Stadium.
I know they're going to have some kind of freaknik going on with the Atlanta Hawks because of the holiday weekend and the barbecue on July 4th, but to bring some memory to your memory, the Bucks did beat the Hawks in Atlanta in Game 3, and Chris Middleton outscored them in a quarter. So they know they have the ability to go in their building and beat the Atlanta Hawks. You're right, Keyshawn. I'm not expecting that 4 guys going to be in double figures in the first half. but they may not need that because it's going to be a knockdown, drag-out battle. And also, by the way, we still don't know if Trae Young is going to play. Even without him or with him, the Bucks still a more talented team even without Giannis. That's why I believe that in a knockdown, drag-out game and with a potential elimination game that they're going to close out in Game 6. I want to be wrong. I want a Game 7, but I don't think I'm going to be wrong. I think this series is over by Saturday night.
Okay, Freddie, so you sound very convicted. Do you think that the Bucks should sit Giannis regardless of how he's feeling in Game 6 to rest him up for the finals if you feel so confident?
It's not about rest, Charlie and Key. It's about you can play. Key will tell you this. You can play hurt, but you can't play injured. Giannis is injured. Trae Young is injured. Both of those guys, we're not talking about just being hurt and a little boo-boo. Giannis has a hyperextended left knee, and we don't even know how severe that injury is. But it's severe enough that you can't put him out there. He may want to be out there, but why are you going to put a player out there in a compromised position when he's injured? So it's not about should they sit Giannis. If he's not healthy, you can't play that guy. I don't care if he begs and borrows and tries to plead his way in the basketball court. You're not doing yourself any kind of favor by putting him out there and maybe even worsening an injury. So it's not about should the Bucks sit Giannis in Game 6. They have no choice because he's injured. He's not hurt. Same thing with Trae Young. You can't put those guys out there and then you make an injury even worse just because you're trying to win a series or trying to win a championship.
Giannis shouldn't play at all. I've had a hyperextended knee before, and it's not fun. It takes a while to come back from. It does not feel good at all. You have no stability there. It has a little wobble to it. And the way that he plays with the Euro steps and the different things that he does with that particular leg, I don't see him playing. I'm not a doctor. Dr. Johnson's not available right now. But yet and
He
still,
stepped out for the holiday weekend.
I certainly, Charlie, don't see where he'll be able to play. And even if he was able to get out on the floor, he wouldn't be the same. He would be compensating. And why further injure yourself, especially when you're the franchise player, just to try to get a victory?
Yeah, well, we want to see him have a speedy recovery because if the Bucks do advance, which, by the way, teams that have been tied 2-2 in a series, in the winner then of Game 5, 82% of the time usually goes on to win Game 6. So if that is the case for the Bucks, we want to see Giannis get his rest, stay healthy, because we definitely want to see him in the finals. Okay, still to come on First Take. Can someone give this man Reggie Bush his Heisman Trophy?
The Heisman Trust is proud to announce the winner of the 2005 Heisman Memorial Trophy. The winner is Reggie Bush from USA.
See what it feels like to lift that trophy.
Good.
Reggie Bush received 784 first place votes.
Those pearly whites, though. Reggie Bush, one of the most electrifying players in the history of college football, and his stellar 2005 season earned him the prestigious Heisman Trophy. That is, until he was banned by the NCAA for receiving impermissible benefits and stripped of the accolade in 2010. In light of the new name, image, and likeness rules in college football, Bush wants his records restored and his trophy back, and many think that he deserves it. 2012 Heisman winner Johnny Manziel tweeted out, "Give Reggie Bush his Heisman back while we're at it." And our own Jay Billis chimed in, tweeting, "Hey, NCAA, since you have now admitted that college athletes are professional, how about riding past wrongs and reinstating the records of Reggie Bush, the Fab Five, and countless others you mistreated over the phony concept of amateurism? It was unfair then, and clearly so now." Okay, Keyshawn, self-proclaimed what would have been the highest paid player in college sports, with this ruling having taken place years and years before. I want to ask you, should Reggie Bush get his Heisman back?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if Reggie would have took my advice to begin with, this would have been a duplicate Heisman, because I told Reggie at the time they asked it back, I said, man, give him the Heisman back, chop it up in a million damn pieces, put it in a box and send it to him. But yes, he absolutely 100% should. We all saw with our own damn eyes that Reggie Bush was a dominant football player. Anything that they claimed went on off the field certainly did contribute to what we saw on the field. On the football field is why he won the Heisman, not based on something that someone said he got in extra benefits. That's not why he won the Heisman. He won because he broke records. He won because he was the most electrifying, dominant football player at that time that we've seen. So he deserves it 100%. In USC, my university, my athletic department, to get involved and contact the NC2A, the Heisman Trophy Committee, and let them know, send us a new shiny one with Reggie Bush's name on it. period?
I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm going to say no.
Man, what are you? Oh, come on.
Keyshawn,
You're just talking now.
No, well, of course I'm just talking. That's what we do. That's how we make our living, by vat mouthing. That's what we do from that standpoint, Keyshawn. And I understand the whole situation about how he won the Heisman on the field. I get it. I understand that. But then when does it stop? When are we going to continue to play revisionist history because the NCAA, phony amateurism, like Jay Billis said, and cronyism and all that stuff? Whatever the vagueness is of this whole situation, the fact of the matter is we're having this conversation because of 3 letters, NIL. If the NIL was not in place, I don't believe we'd be having this groundswell of supporters saying that Reggie Bush should get his Heisman back. Or Reggie Bush.
I always felt, Freddie, they should have never took it from me.
I get it, but I understand that. But this conversation is ramping up even more because of what's happening in 2021. Not what happened back then. Whatever we believe about Reggie Bush, whatever we believe is something improper or proper went on, whatever that is. The fact of the matter is to go back in history and to right some wrong, then when does it end? Then it's not going to end, because I know if I'm somebody else, I'm thinking, well, that point was taken away from me in the game. Why don't you give that back to me? I think it's opening up too much of a Pandora's box that once you go down that slope, then there's no coming back from it, because it's not just a right or wrong here, or wrong was committed, or trying to right that wrong. To me, it's a little bit bigger than that. That's why the NIL is in place, because we couldn't do that back then. We couldn't do that for the Keyshawn Johnsons of the world. We couldn't do that for other people. But we're trying to do it now and go back in the past. And I don't think you can do that when it comes to Reggie Bush getting his Heisman back.
But Freddie, it's a case-by-case basis. You're talking about somebody wants a point back because of this.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to get a record back because of that. We're talking about taking a piece of hardware away from an individual that performed on the field. Off the field stuff had nothing to do with this. Nothing at all. Not one thing at all. If you wanted to punish Reggie Bush for off the field behavior or whatever you want to call it, that's fine. This award is about being on the field. You don't get an award for having the most endorsements as a college athlete. You don't get a reward for having made the most money off the field as a college athlete. You get this award because you performed at the highest level of anybody at the point in time in which you played against or during that time period. That's how you win the Heisman.
Keyshawn, I get it. But whether we like the rules or not, according to the NCAA, and like I said, I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm not an NCAA fan. But according to NCAA, certain rules were violated, or rules were violated in this situation that will affect your status on a football field or a basketball court or a baseball field. I don't like the rules either. I couldn't stand those rules. I didn't like the fact that athletes were not getting paid.
So let me ask you this then, Freddie. So how can the NC2A and the Heisman Committee go retroactive to take the Heisman back? Because remember, Reggie Bush had played that junior year and was playing on the field and doing everything that he needed to do while under investigation. In the end, the season was over. He wins the Heisman while still under investigation. But it's okay for the NC2A to go and be retroactive and take the Heisman, but it's not okay to go retroactive and give it back.
Because this is beyond the NCAA matter, because the NIL is outside the NCAA now. That's why we're having this conversation based on what's going on in 2021. If I had my way, he would have never lost the Heisman to begin with. It would have never been taken away. But the fact of the matter is it was because according to NCAA rules back then, he violated those rules and it affected his status on the football field. Is it unfair to have that applied to him? Absolutely. But those were the rules in place, Key, and I hate that those rules were in place. But if you violated those rules, he was not the only one that got punished by the NCAA. In this case, he got punished because he lost the best trophy in college football, one of the best trophies in sports when it comes to the Heisman Trophy. But for all of a sudden to go back now, I'm with you. I hear it. With the retroactive stuff, the NCAA is an unfair organization. In an unfair world, then Reggie Bush should get his Heisman back. But the reason that this conversation is happening is because of what the NCAA did not do all these years. And we tried to hold them accountable, but they're too powerful of an institution to be held accountable. Now their power structure is crumbling at our feet. It's crumbling at their feet right now. And now everybody wants to get their prizes back. It's going to be very hard to just placate everybody in a case-by-case business. We don't have that kind of time in our lifetimes to make sure that right's going to be wrong.
It's not that hard. All you got to do is get a man a damn trophy back. It's simple.
Well,
Hey,
can you
you
play
can
for
have
the
your trophy
NCAA?
back. Much like USC, our university said, Reggie Bush has to stay away from the university.
Right.
We got a new president. We got a new athletic director, along with Matt Leinart and other athletes that went to USC. They said, yo, Reggie Bush is part of our family. Go to the NC2A and let their ass know that Reggie Bush can come around our university and be a part of our program again.
Yeah,
we were able to do that, so go and get the trophy.
But this is a different deal because you're talking about dealing with the Heisman Trophy Committee and NCAA. Do you know how hard it is to push things through the NCAA? Kid, you played in the NCAA.
It's not that hard if you want to do it.
If you want to do it, but the NCAA is like the mafia. If they don't want you to get involved in something to protect their interests, they're going to make it that much harder for you, and they're going to try to outlast you more than anything else. That's what they're counting on in this situation, that they're going to outlast. They're going to try to do the same thing to Reggie Bush that Major League Baseball's done to Pete Rose, hoping that Pete Rose get outlasted where he won't try to cry about being in the Baseball Hall of Fame for committing a wrong. Reggie Bush committed a wrong according to NCAA rules. To go back in time to give him his Heisman back, I hate that I'm siding with NCAA, but he should not get his Heisman back because he did something wrong according to
that's
NCAA
all right.
rules.
I know somebody,
There
Charlie.
have been, I'm sure, plenty of players who have done things wrong. Even recently, Johnny Manziel admitted that he took money while at Texas A&M after his Heisman Trophy.
So he should give his trophy back too?
Well, he's not doing
Fact of the
that.
matter is, Reggie Bush is the only Heisman winner to have his trophy vacated. Even O.J. Simpson didn't lose his Heisman trophy. So, look, if it were up to me, give the man his trophy back. I think there have been far worse wrongs that have been done, and I just think it would be something. But we do have to move
Simpson
on.
made the show. Wow.
I know somebody, Charlie, that can make a duplicate for him. Don't worry.
Okay, look,
you
get
know a
on
guy?
it, please, then.
You know a
Okay,
guy,
guys,
Kate?
we got to keep it going because we have more football controversy to dive into later this show. Dan Snyder and the Washington football team fined $10 million by the NFL. Key and Freddie on whether the NFL came down too soft in this case. Plus, he is half man, half Giannis. No problem. After struggling without their star player in Game 4, the Bucks took the series lead last night in dominating fashion. 4 of the Bucks' 5 starters scored 22 points or more en route to a Game 5 victory. The Hawks, meanwhile, searching for answers without Trae Young, who's been averaging 32.7 points per game in this series. Freddie, what was the biggest reason for the Bucks' win last night?
Attitude, to be honest with you, because they weren't having it last night. It's one thing to have production, but they play with an attitude in terms of, you know what, we're tired of just sitting back and letting the Atlanta Hawks dictate, which the Atlanta Hawks had done to great effect before Trae Young when he was there, then after Trae Young got injured. We saw it happen in Game 4, how they're able to just step on the Bucks' throat early and not even back up before Giannis got injured and after Giannis got injured. The Atlanta Hawks found out that could happen to them, and the Milwaukee Bucks did it. And I firmly believe it started when Drew Holiday got that first 2 points in the paint, and then Brook Lopez said, hey, if that's good for you, then it's good for me. Then everybody else was able to do the same thing. They forced Nate McMillan to challenge his basketball team to say, what's up with you guys? Where are you guys? He could not believe that a Bucks team that is known for being a finesse team was being the tougher basketball team, was being the more physical basketball team. So we can talk about production all we want. It was great production by the Milwaukee Bucks getting in the paint, but that attitude adjustment was the biggest reason why they were able to win. Brook Lopez is normally a guy that loves camping on the outside and taking three-point shots. He said, He got those paint touches, and he put it on those smaller guys. That big dude played like a big dude last night. For me, it's one thing to have production, but that attitude and taking advantage and using that to great effect against the Atlanta Hawks, to me, was the biggest reason why the Milwaukee Bucks have a 3-2 series lead in this one.
Okay, and before we get to you, Keyshawn, let's welcome in the great Vince Carter. Welcome, Vince. Thanks for being here. How you doing?
Guys? Yes, thanks for having me.
So we want to ask you, what was the biggest reason last night for the Bucks win?
Freddie alluded to it. I think first and foremost, Drew Holiday imposing his will in the post, not settling for jump shots. The first play of the game in the post, quick elbow, jump, hook. Next, Chris Middleton with the jump shot, and then everyone followed suit from there. Brook Lopez and, the battery pack, a.k.a. Bobby Portis, brought his energy and his will and effort. He imposed his will on the offensive glass as well as the defensive glass. And once they hit the Hawks in the mouth, when you're in, I'm going to say this, when you're on the road, like for the Hawks, you're saying, hey, the first 5 minutes, stand strong. Take the blow, and then we go from there. Well, they took the blow, but they were never able to bounce back. They got within 7 points, but that was it. And that's because of Bobby Portis and Brook Lopez in the paint dominating.
What I would say, VC, is I say, you know what? Home court advantage always plays a part, and not having your star player in Trae Young certainly played a part. And I know Trae Young has been streaky at times, but his motivation, who he is as a player, being on the court to help his team facilitate, spacing things out. And Clint Capella didn't play him particularly well at all. He was bully balled in the paint. There was no real adjustments made by Nate McMillan. But again, when you don't have your star player on the floor, sometimes that can be very difficult. And I know they beat them at home in Atlanta, but that gave the home court advantage to Atlanta Hawks. So the energy that they were missing from Speedy Gonzalez, they got from the crowd. And when you think about it now, they're going back home for Game 6. Whether it's Trae Young or not, I think at the same time, VC, they will wind up figuring out a way how to neutralize Brook Lopez, because I can't see or believe that Brook Lopez and Portis are going to do the same things they did in Game 5 again in Atlanta for Game 6.
Well, I look at one thing that Coach Nate McMillan said before the game. The team that hits first will win, because you're setting the tone. You're setting the tone on how you want to play, and you're trying to establish yourself before the other team. Well, the Hawks did not do that on the road for whatever reason. The Bucks understood how important this game is to them. So they said, what? No Giannis? No problem. We're going to put the big fella in the post so he can play in the post. Because if you think about it, he had more space to operate. And that's why we see Brook Lopez a lot on the perimeter, because they give Giannis the space he needs to operate. Now Brook Lopez gets the opportunity to operate in the post with 4 guys around the perimeter, and they found that to work. When they took him out, Bobby Portis plays down there in the post. So, and if not, they put the 2 bigs out there and let Jrue Holiday. So they felt like, hey, we're going to beat you up, we're going to score in the post, and what are you going to do about it? So like you said, home cooking for the Hawks, and the formula of we play better at home is hopefully is enough. But when you bring Trae Young into the picture, you mentioned Trae. So you bring Trae, hopefully, if he's not able to play to that 32 point per game ability, he can make plays for these guys to knock down shots.
Vince, what is it about in terms of a game like this if you're the Bucks? Because not trying to slight Mike Budenholzer, but it seemed to me that the Bucks were more about motivating themselves as players to get into the paint, even if that was the game plan. How much of that is more of a players thing now, where you can say we can get whatever we want from the coach, but it's really on us to set this tone and not have to worry about carrying out instructions or the game plan from the head coach in this situation?
I think it's a little bit of both, in understanding what works and where your mismatches and what you can take advantage of. And they felt like they could take advantage of bully ball in the post, because when Giannis is aggressive and not settling for 3-point shots or mid-range and getting to the basket, they were successful. And you mentioned earlier that Game 3, that's what they did. Giannis attack into the paint. Well, now they said we have no Giannis. We need our bigs or our post-up guys to be aggressive. So now look for the Bucks to utilize that again, to be aggressive. But how do you offset that? Well, you have to attack them on the other end, bring Brook Lopez out on the perimeter to guard. And when they did that, they got him in foul trouble, and they got him off the floor because he couldn't guard guards downhill in pick and roll.
VC, when you look at it, and Trae Young, let's assume Trae Young doesn't play for whatever weird reason, because he tried to warm up and it didn't look good, so he decided to sit this one out. Can Lou Will, along with Bogdanovic, spread the floor, like you're saying, on switches, bring Lopez in? Now all of a sudden they can knock down threes and get into that type of rhythm that they had in Game 4 while they're at home?
Yeah, Key, I tell you, Lou Will did not play well. Bogdanovic, Bogey, he was fantastic, 28 points, but Lou Will didn't particularly play well, and he had those switches, and he really could not get by him without a contest by Lopez. So look for them to kind of to get Lopez on the run first, having to guard multiple actions into an isolation. And with the live dribble, you look for some things like that. You can't just pick and roll, switch, attack. They were prepared for that. But if he has to guard multiple actions, now you kind of get him late on the switch, then you attack him, make him put his hands on you and foul. That is something I think I would try to utilize for Game 6.
Okay, Vince, there are some clear adjustments that can be made, but in your opinion, after what you saw last night, is this series over?
It all depends on what you get out of Trae Young. First and foremost, I'm going to root for my Hawks regardless. I'm only a year removed, and they're doing this. When I leave, that's another story for another day. But but no, I think home cooking is good. But if they cannot make the adjustment of stopping these guys in the post, it's going to be a long night, and they go home. So no Trae Young, they could possibly go home. So I'm going to say the Hawks going to pull this off.
All right. Okay. Well, Vince, we always appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time. Also, your insight.
Thanks, guys.
We really appreciate having you. All right. Let's keep it moving. Our friend Big Perk said if Chris Paul wins the title this year, it means more than a normal championship. Is that true? Our guys debate. Following its investigation, the NFL has fined the Washington football team $10 million for what it's calling, quote, a highly unprofessional workplace, saying the organization subjected employees, specifically women, to sexual harassment and intimidation. The league also said owner Dan Snyder will take a lesser role with the team. The league, though, now facing backlash for not coming down harder on the organization. Here's Adam Schefter.
It is one of the stiffest fines that the NFL ever has handed down, and it is appropriate. But at the same time, there were no suspensions. There were no loss of draft picks. And this is for a case in which there were no legal charges against anybody in the Washington organization. But a law firm in Washington interviewed over 150 current and former employees, and they found an organization that sounded like it was run out of a cesspool, where there was harassment, where there was intimidation, where there was bullying, where there was women who did not feel safe in that particular work environment. And so the league handed down a figure that certainly sounds stiff, but in a way, it's not very much considering the fact that there were no suspensions and there were no loss of draft picks in this particular case.
Did the NFL come down hard enough on Washington?
I don't think so, Charlie. I think when you look at it, it's money. It's $10 million. You look at that number. That's that's nothing to an NFL owner, an NFL team. And if you know how things work, they can write that down. So it's not even $10 million because they're going to write it down in their tax returns, whatever they do from a corporate standpoint. A charitable contribution, all of those. So that number is even smaller. And then when you think about it, you say to yourself, early on, and I know it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing as Daniel Snyder or Donald Sterling and Daniel Snyder with the LA Clippers. It's the NFL and the NBA. But what the NFL didn't do, what the NBA did early on, is they wind up saying to themselves, it's bad for our league. It's bad for our logo. It's not right. They told him, you got to sell the team. And I feel like with everything that has gone on with the Washington football team from day one, not just this, but from the naming rights situation to now the harassment situation and all the lawsuits and the problems with the owners that was his partners and the minority side, all of those sort of things, I think the league should have stepped in a long time ago and said to themselves, you know what? This is bad for our business as a whole. You are one of the marquee franchises in the National Football League, and we are getting a black eye because of the behavior in your organization. I have 2 daughters, okay? And I know how important it is to respect women and not do certain things. So $10 million, yeah, you could have took some draft picks because it's going to hurt long-term success. If you decide to deplete them of draft picks, they won't be able to draft guys to be successful. But is it really about that? Or is it really about changing the real culture and environment and what your organization is? Yeah, hiring Jason Wright is great. That was wonderful. I loved it. And he's got a lot of control to fix things over there. But was that the only thing that you could have done? And I don't think so. But that's just me.
Keyshawn, I'm 100% with you. Here's something else. Daniel Snyder's worth $2.6 billion. They essentially took 0.003% away from him with $10 million. To use the line from Coming to America, that's pocket money, Akeem, when it comes to Daniel Snyder. That's what it comes down to. The average household in this country is $50,000. That's equivalent to $192 of having your car impounded. That's the kind of fine that the NFL levied on Dan Snyder. Of course, it's not going to mean anything to a guy like Dan Snyder because, once again, it's another slap on the wrist. It's like the NFL said, hey, Dan, for the 80th time, don't do this anymore or we're really going to come down hard on you. He goes, okay. And so you're going to take with day-to-day operations. BFD from that standpoint when it comes to Dan Snyder and the National Football League. When you are well-liked among the owners, and all owners are well-liked in the National Football League, Keyshawn, you're right. They are going to protect the shield. They're going to protect each other from this standpoint. But it seems time and time again, they're always protecting this guy, specifically this guy. Whatever power stroke he has in the National Football League, they just let him get away with stuff time and time and time again. Fining him $10 million, once again, the NFL is letting everybody know when it comes to sexual misconduct or treatment of women, we don't care. We'll just fine $10 million, and like you said, Keyshawn, he'll just write it off. But this is the same NFL organization that when somebody does something a lot worse, as an owner than Dan Snyder, they go whatever. When it comes to players, it could be something very minute, and they want to kick them out of the league. Ask Colin Kaepernick about that from that standpoint. They made him a pariah in the National Football League, but yet Dan Snyder looked the other way when this cesspool was going on and a $10 million fine. The NFL stands for not for long, unless you're Dan Snyder, and they're going to protect their own when it comes to owners in the National Football League.
$10 million. That's enough money to fill up his gas tank on his yacht for the summer.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned it is pocket change to Dan Snyder. And Key, you mentioned that because there is the ability to donate this money, it's not even actually a fine because you can write that off and really it doesn't even come to $10 million. The league has already said that the money will be used for, quote, to support organizations committed to character education, anti-bullying, healthy relationships, and related topics. So none of it really makes sense. It very, very much seems like just a slap on the wrist. I think we can all agree on that. So let's keep it moving, guys, because so many greats have hoisted the Larry O'Brien trophy in the past few years. But would it mean more than all of them if CP3 wins it this year? That debate is next. Stay tuned to First Take. Chris Paul is on the way to the NBA Finals for the first time in his 16-year career. His previous playoff runs have fallen short due to everything from injuries to really just teams that didn't live up to expectations. And our own Kendrick Perkins has his back, tweeting his support for CP3, saying, quote, yes, CP3's finals run is one of the most impressive ever because of how he did it. He didn't cheat the process by joining a super team. He went down to Phoenix and got it out the mud and led a young group of guys with zero playoff experience to the finals. Kudos, CP3. Carry on. Kendrick Perkins, what a guy. Okay, so this got all of us thinking. Freddie, are all titles created equal?
No, all titles aren't created equal, mainly because it's so hard to win a championship. I don't care what sport it is. And Key knows this from winning a Super Bowl championship. It's hard to win a playoff game. Or in the NBA, it's hard to win a playoff series. Must have a run to get to win a championship. So I'm never going to slight any team or any player if you win a championship. It's not Chris Paul's fault that Anthony Davis got injured in round one, or that Jamal Murray was not there in round two with the Denver Nuggets, or that Kawhi Leonard was not around for round three of the playoff run, if somebody else may not be around, whether it's Giannis or Trae Young, for potential NBA Finals. I'm not going to slight Chris Paul or any champion winning because they win the championship. That's on you to try to stay as healthy as possible and freak things happen. But all championships are not created equal. That doesn't mean you put an asterisk or slight anyone who wins a championship. It is really, really bloody hard to win a championship in any sport. And if you're able to go through that grind and win it, what happened on the other side, that's on them. That should not be applied to you.
Yeah, Chris Paul deserves it when he wins it. There's no question about it. And I understand what Perk is saying, but at the same time, I don't slight the individuals that put super teams together and go win a championship either.
Yep,
I mean, it's just, it is what it is. I think Chris Paul, but when you say are all titles created equal, no, because they're all won differently. Some are won with Magic Johnson taking over at center in 1982 and playing. Well, Kareem wasn't there, so Magic decided to play the position and balled out. They win a championship. LeBron James goes to Miami and he wins with his super team down there with Ray Allen and Chris Bosh along with Dwayne Wade. Doesn't mean anything. KG and the group in Boston, they get it together. A super three, big three, they win everything. The Lakers just did it with LeBron and AD. And Chris Paul, here's why Chris Paul is special to me.
Okay.
Because 16 years in the league, have never gotten past round two other than in Houston, Then he loses to Golden State because he gets hurt. But yet and still, he didn't decide to say, I'm out of here, OKC, I'm going to stay with you. He brought them up into the playoffs, made a strong run, had everybody believing that OKC can get it done. He moves and goes to Phoenix, which is a young team, puts them on his back, teaches them how to play NBA basketball as real professionals. And he winds up in the NBA Finals. Now, if he gets a ring and cap that off, imagine all the work in 16 years he put in to get to that point.
All worth it.
All worth it.
Yeah. Maybe the injury gods finally was on the side of Chris Paul instead of being against him all these years, because look at all the injuries that have happened. He got taken advantage of when he got injured, and nobody said, well, poor Chris Paul. So you can't use that against him because you don't want him to win a championship. You can't play fast and loose as far as I'm concerned from that standpoint.
How could you live with yourself if you don't want Chris Paul to win a championship?
That's a whole different conversation.
I mean, Chris Paul just had COVID, for God's sakes, okay? Now he's back, balling out, going to the NBA Finals, first time in his 16-year career. We are all nothing short of so happy for him. But, guys, that's all the time we have. Good show. Thanks for being here, everybody. Have a wonderful fourth.
To play for and couldn't get to the conference finals. Now he's taking the team not just to the conference finals, but to the NBA Finals. Congratulations to CP3. Oh, the Phoenix Suns are there too. First takes in the house. Let's go.
We come together even more so in these moments. This team just made up of toughness.
We have to realize we're trying to close out a series. We have to do whatever it takes.
Chris Paul once again from downtown. Booker uses the screen beautifully and flushes.
This is the deal. We don't give up.
Paul step back three-pointer, puts it in, and the foul.
Chris Paul is in the NBA Finals. What do you think when you hear that sentence?
Man, it sounds damn good. Damn good.
Never give up, right? What's going on, everybody? Welcome into First Take in the afternoon on Friday Eve. Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman on Molly Karam. Gentlemen, how we doing?
All right. How y'all doing?
I'm good.
Man hasn't slept now in 3 weeks. Look at him.
Yeah, but he always puts on a show.
As soon as the light goes on.
Do I look sleepy? I'm wide awake. I feel good.
You look good.
I think it's incredible that you look wide awake.
Okay. Yeah.
That must be some strong coffee, brother.
California sunshine, it does things to you.
And the excitement that Chris Paul just provided, for sure.
He's a special talent. All right, guys. In the building he called home for 6 seasons of his 16-year career, Chris Paul, unstoppable after a 10-0 run by the Clippers, responding with an 8-0 run of his own to silence the crowd and cast off the playoff demon. CP3 earned the first finals berth of his career, while Phoenix is making its first appearance in nearly 3 decades, putting up 41 points, 7 of 8 from three-point range. Let me add 0 turnovers for those 40. Here he is.
Chris Paul is in the NBA Finals. What do you think when you hear that sentence?
Man, it sounds damn good. Damn good. It's been a lot of work, man. A lot of work. Going to a new team, everybody staying the course. That team fight hard. T. Lue, unbelievable coach. Chauncey Billups, my big brother. So many ties to that team. But damn, this feels good.
What kind of mission were you on?
Don't lose. Don't lose mission. You know what I'm saying? Damn, that feel good. I wish my son and my family come down here. I don't know, man. It's just a lot of emotions, a lot of injuries. I was getting an MRI yesterday on my wrist. A lot of shit going on. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I just want to get over there with my team, Rach. Respect. Appreciate you.
Couldn't be more happy for him and Monty Williams. Max, I'll start with you. What did CP3 prove last night?
That was the biggest legacy-defining single game in the NBA in the last half decade, since LeBron Game 7, 2016 against the Warriors at Oracle. It was the biggest legacy-defining game since then. Said it yesterday. He had the most to gain and the most to lose. Had he lost, another one, CP3, where your team is up and then they collapse, and this time they're up because Cam Payne was running the offense and doing better than you, right? This time they're up because they're 2-0 without you. Then you come back and you slow things down and you start to lose. Another collapse. Oh, no, you can't be a top 5 point guard. Versus when it mattered most, coming off the best series I'd ever seen him play, and that's saying a lot. When it mattered most with the chips on the line, Stephen A., the man dropped 41 with no turnovers. He's on a list. We've all seen the graphic by now. The only players in the history of the game, since they've been tracking these things, the only players in a conference finals to give you 40-plus points with 0 turnovers are Hakeem and MJ and Shaq. That's it. And now Chris Paul. It doesn't get bigger than that. Well, I suppose if it was a Game 7 in the finals. But this is the biggest legacy-defining game since LeBron did just that in 2016.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with that. I'm just going to take it to a different lane here. You know, a couple of weeks ago or so, I said if Chris Paul had won the championship, he's one of the top 5 point guards in the history of basketball. And when I talk point guards, I'm talking about quintessential floor leaders, an extension of the coach on the floor, a person who's an orchestrator, a floor general who runs the team, who knows not just his job, but everybody else's job, and does his best to maximize the potential around him. And when we see CP3, the inordinate amount of playoff games he's participated in, how everywhere he's gone, teams have gotten better with him, worse without him, et cetera, et cetera. Him as a point guard proves it without question in that regard. But it goes to an extra level. I remember former PR guy John Black for the Los Angeles Lakers. Max, you know him. I love John Black. I've known him for many years. And out of the blue, he texted me because he was challenging my assertions about Chris Paul. And then he threw out names like Iverson, Oscar Robertson, Magic Johnson, Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, I'll go as far as to say this. When you look at CP3, if he were to have a title in his possession, yes, I would put him over Jason Kidd. Yes, I would put him over Steve Nash. And Iverson, I never considered a point guard. I covered him for 10 years. I'm telling you, he wasn't a point guard. He was a scoring machine and just pound for pound, one of the greatest warriors we've ever seen. But he wasn't a quintessential point guard. And that's what I look at CP3 as being. And so to see him last night come out there and be the floor general that he was, but then to follow up Paul George's 41-point performance with 41 of his own, 31 in the second half. He's never done that at any point in time in his career in the regular season or the postseason. And when I take all of that into consideration, it definitely magnifies and solidifies, Max, everything that you just said. But what really touches your heart is to see him go over to Monty Williams and hug him the way that he did and bury his face in his arms, because it's been 16 long years. And as I said on SportsCenter last night, as a guy that, you know, in full disclosure, I executive produced that docuseries, Why Not Us, on North Carolina Central University's basketball team, led by the great coach Lavelle Moten. And CP3 and I executive produced that together, along with Roadside Entertainment. And you look at that, and you think about the kind of things that CP3 talked about and the kind of things that he endured. Max, he is not very liked by a lot of guys in the NBA. Not most, not all, but a lot of guys do not like him. There are more who love him, and all of them respect him because they know that he don't play and he's going to hold everybody accountable. And as Devin Booker once said, he's an acquired taste. He's not for everybody, but he's clearly for this Phoenix Suns team, and you can see that with the love that they showed for him. It was a real special moment to be there last night and to watch him do what he did.
That's why on my radio show, Max Kellerman Show, 2 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, I said when the trade went down, this is perfect. And I mentioned 3 or 4 teams I thought were still better than the Suns, but said I'm not even sure about that. You know, I'm not even sure about it because it would all fit together so perfectly, especially what you just said about Chris Paul, his effect on DeAndre Ayton. Because Chris Paul is not the tallest or the fastest or even the strongest or the quickest. He just wants it more than everyone. He works harder. So if you're 7-foot #1 pick like DeAndre Ayton, how can you not also try to match that? I want to say something, Stephen A. You often say you have a different standard for the shortest kind of guy, the shorter players, the shorter point guards. And you should, because those guys, the sport selects out for height. Those guys need something going for them to win a title. You know, Chris Paul is a more complete player than Steve Nash or Jason Kidd. What's the weakness in his game, really? And now he can be validated in a different way, not only by getting to the finals, but by winning. But, guys, the reason that this is possible is because of injury. That's what happened to the Lakers. They were up 2-1. AD gets hurt. The Nuggets did not have Jamal Murray or Porter Jr., basically because he was very badly hurt, although he was on the court. And the Clippers didn't have their best player, Kawhi. Chris Paul could not afford not to lead this team to the finals. He's done it. But it's not over yet, Stephen A. He's still got to win it. The Suns should be favored in the finals.
Yeah, a career game last night, guys. We'll keep it going. Stephen A., yesterday you said if the Clippers won the title without Kawhi Leonard, they should move on from him. Clearly, that mission not accomplished. Paul George, meanwhile, had some big games in this series, but last night, Game 6, not one of them. He was 6 of 15 shooting and minus 25. How do you feel about Kawhi Leonard and Paul George today?
Well, you got to keep them. You got to keep Kawhi Leonard now. I mean, averaging 30 on 57% shooting from the field before he went down at the tail end of Game 4 in the Western Conference semis against Utah. And you see what happened after that. The Clippers were like 15, you know, I don't know what their record was since that moment in time, but, you know, they were like 15 and 13 with him without this season. And obviously they won their share of playoff games, but in the end, they won 2 playoff games to close out Utah. They won the final 3, and then obviously they won 2 games in this series. But in the end, there was just something missing. And, you know, listen, Paul George did not choke. Paul George is not a scrub. Paul George is a star in this league. But there's levels. And there's a level that he just wasn't on. He was on it in Game 5, but you got to continue that on. And if you had lost last night with Paul George showing out, but they just had to succumb to Chris Paul, that would have been different. They got beat down by the Phoenix Suns last night. Phoenix Suns ran them out of their own building. So Paul George, the star, had that one game, which was Game 5, where he was lights out. And not to say he didn't have other good games this postseason where he scored over 30, like 3 or 4 straight games. But what you did in Game 5, when you had a 3-1 deficit and was on the brink of elimination in Phoenix, there was no reason why you should not have been able to do that at the Staples Center. You could call it fatigue, might have been tired, might have been a lot of things. He's been logging a lot of minutes, and I totally understand that. But you got to find a way to gumption up whatever's inside of you to put forth a better performance than he put forth last night. He came up small last night, not embarrassingly small like they did in Game 7 against Denver last year or anything like that. But you found yourself expecting a lot more and a lot better from Paul George, and that's not what happened. And you did walk away feeling like if Kawhi Leonard was there, there's no way the Phoenix Suns would be in the finals. The Clippers would have been in the finals based on everything else you saw. As a matter of fact, they'd probably win it based on the plethora of injuries that have taken place throughout the rest of the playoffs. But Kawhi did go down, and it was up to Paul George to step up and get it done. He got it done in Game 5, didn't get it done in Game 6, came up considerably smaller than we had expected, and that's a big reason why the Clippers are home today.
If Kawhi doesn't get hurt, the Clippers advance, period. But today, I'm not going to criticize Paul George. You know I've been critical about his playoff performances in the past, Stephen A. Not today. Because I don't care that he's less efficient in the playoffs than he normally is. It's not that I don't care. It's that the playoff defenses are better. The question is, did he play well or not? And the answer is yes. He's a two-way player. If his offense is off one game,
you're talking overall or last night?
Overall in these playoffs.
Okay.
If his offense is off, he can help you defensively. Chris Paul was excellent in these playoffs, and this is a big piece of evidence that doesn't erase what's happened in the past, but it counterbalances it. Just like you can't ignore what's happened in the past, you can't ignore this. And let me tell you something. I give LeBron enormous credit. Enormous credit in 2015 for taking a team without his second or third best players to Game 6 against the Warriors, who won the championship. I give Kevin Durant enormous credit in these playoffs for taking that Bucks team to a Game 7 with a chance to win it, you know, in overtime with that shot where he airballed the 3, but he deserves credit for getting there. Now, I'd like to point out they were up 2-0, which means after he lost his help, they lost 4 out of 5, right? Nevertheless, he deserves credit, just like Paul George does for getting this team to a Game 6 without Kawhi Leonard. Like, it's even harder to do what Paul George did because he's not missing the second best player on the team. He's missing the best player on the team, and largely because of his play, they were able to get to a Game 6 against a team. Look, Chris Paul missed a couple games. Devin Booker had his face broken, everything, but they had their guys together in the end, and Paul George did not.
I'm not going to accuse you of not answering the question, but you go through that long soliloquy.
Who had a long soliloquy?
And just ignored Game 6. What I'm trying to say is this. Paul George, Paul George performed well throughout these playoffs, but he didn't last night.
Yeah,
would
I
have
think he had
sufficed.
21, 9, and 2.
The man did 6 for 15 in the midst of CP3 putting on that show.
Yeah.
The one person you were looking for an answer from didn't give it to you in that one game. It doesn't erase everything else he's done. But that one game, which was the closeout game, Max, he showed up for the closeout game in Game 5. Didn't show up for the closeout game in Game 6.
All right, big time
He
players.
did not show up.
Big
He didn't
time
have
plays,
his
big
best
time
game.
moments. Guys, we got to keep it pushing here because we're
Okay.
only 90 minutes. So plenty more first takes still to come. Which team needs their superstar to return more? Surprise, surprise. The fellas not exactly seeing eye to eye on Giannis versus Trey. Plus, Chris Paul had one of, if not the best games of his career last night. Did he break the Clippers? Patrick Beverley, salty. Our guys on the Clipper Conundrum in just Hawks Bucks Game 5 tonight. The Bucks will be losing a lot of production with the absence of Giannis, as the Greek Freak is averaging 28 points, just under 13 rebounds, along with 5 assists in these playoffs. He will be the 10th All-Star to miss time this postseason. Trae Young also questionable to play tonight. The 22-year-old averaging just under 30 points, 10 assists this postseason. Talk about production. Max Kellerman.
Yeah.
Max, which star return is more important for their respective team in advancing in this series?
The answer is Giannis. I mean, I just saw no Giannis, no Trae Young. What happens? The Hawks won. The Hawks won because Lou Will can do an impersonation of Trae Young. He's a real good scorer, and he was even dishing some assists because Bogdanovich can play, because they have guys. Herter can play, and they have guys who are stepping up. That is not what, look, the Bucks were supposed to have the third and fourth best player in this series. Giannis and Trae Young are the two best, and the third and fourth best player were supposed to be Middleton and Drew Holiday. That has not always been the case. The reason, Stephen A., they're not perennial all-stars is because they're not usually great. They are sometimes great. They're usually good, sometimes great. And without Giannis, those two especially need to step up. But what happened? Middleton drops 38, looks like MJ one game, and the next night Cam Reddish shuts him down? Can't happen. But it's what happened. Giannis, Stephen A., could have just won his third MVP. The only reason he didn't, because he put up the same numbers he did in back-to-back seasons when he won MVP, is because got a little fatigue giving him back-to-back awards, and we also what happened in the postseason. And that kind of got held against him, because he had the same season 3 years in a row. He is normally a more effective player even than Trae Young, and that's saying a lot. And they need him now more than ever.
We disagree because I believe the Milwaukee Bucks, even without Giannis Antetokounmpo, have the talent and the experience to beat the Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young is averaging 32 and 6 this series on 47.9% shooting from the field. Now, I don't know what damn Atlanta Hawks game you watching, but Lou Williams can't imitate that. Not that average. He can have a game, but that's not what Lou Williams does. He can put up buckets, and we've seen him put up buckets in prolific fashion, but not in the last couple of years, not on this level. Trae Young is cat quick. He can pass the ball. He forces you to spread your defense out, opening up lanes for guys on the interior, not to mention creating open shots for other dudes, as opposed to just taking dudes off the dribble one-on-one or catching and shooting like Lou Williams does. Here's the reality of the situation, and this is why I continue to say he's the most important player, because without Trae Young, I don't believe the Hawks have a chance of winning this series. If Trae Young is there, you have a chance even with Giannis healthy. So imagine what chance you'd have without Giannis there. That's how I view it. I think with Middleton and Drew Holiday, what they're supposed to be, Max, should be enough to beat the Hawks, which is a more accurate way to say that. What they're supposed to be with the Atlanta Hawks. With the Atlanta Hawks, it's all about Trae. If you're talking about getting to the NBA Finals, it's all about Trae.
What they're supposed to be, I agree with you. And that's what I'm challenging. You know, it's not like Collins had a great game last game, but he might be the third best player in the series. Like, you have some guys to choose from. Who's the third or fourth best player in the series? Brand name-wise, it's Middleton and Holiday. They've been around. They've each made at least one all-star team. Middleton's made two. But in fact, not just by reputation, but in fact, that has not always been the case, even in this series. And that's the problem. Giannis is the guy that makes the Bucks, oh, wait a minute. You got to deal with this. And now, hey, let's get a little contribution from Middleton. We can win this thing. But without Giannis, not only does Middleton have to show up every night, but Drew Holiday has to take over running the offense. Now, I think they could do it. I thought they could, especially against the team in Atlanta. It's not like they're playing Brooklyn, but they got to do it. They haven't done it so far.
Yeah, but I think that what you're trying to say is that they have to do it, and I'm saying one of them has to do it. If one does it without the other, they could still beat the Hawks. If Trae Young ain't there to do it, they ain't winning. They're not winning.
I think your argument would be...
That's what I'm saying.
I think your argument would be a lot more persuasive, and I might have even agreed with it had I not just seen it in Game 4.
Well, you got to remember. Well, you got to remember. It's a couple of things that happened, right? The Milwaukee Bucks gave up their lead in the first half, and then you remember they came storming back, and Giannis was unstoppable. And you sort of got the impression, okay, they stole one from us in Game 1. We stomped them in Game 2. We came back and took Game 3 and reclaimed home court advantage. And not only that, Max Kellerman, even though I know this is not a popular thing to say, Max and Molly, but I'll say it for you anyway.
Okay.
I keep telling y'all, distractions matter. And when you're in a place like the ATL and you have an off night, Now, it's one thing if you played and you got back-to-back and there's no nights off and then you're flying into that city the same day. But when you got time to hang out in places like the ATL, it might take you a little while to get your game together before you turn on the afterburners. Just trust me on this.
An unpopular thing to say, but let's be honest, both teams need their stars. Let's keep it rolling here, guys. Led by heading back to the finals for the first time since 1993, Chris Paul is going for the first time in his career. CP3, what do you think?
Chris Paul is in the NBA Finals. What do you think when you hear that sentence?
Man, it sounds damn good. Damn good. It's been a lot of work, man. A lot of work. Going to a new team, everybody staying the course. That team fight hard. T. Lue, unbelievable coach. Chauncey Billups, my big brother. So many ties to that team. But damn, this feels good.
We knew they broke. We knew we broke them. I mean, it's no better sign of defeat than knowing that moment, that moment where it's like competition meets and you just can't do anything else to help your team overcome that situation. He just broke. And that's what we was trying to reach.
All right, so Patrick Beverley, who was ejected in the fourth quarter after shoving Chris Paul in the back, tweeted this apology, CP3, emotions got the best of me last night, gang. My bad, wasn't meant for you. Congrats on making it to the finals. Best of luck. Stephen A. Smith. Yeah. Did the Suns break the Clippers?
Well, they clearly broke the Clippers, and it's sad for me to say it's rare that I'm critical of Patrick Beverley because I love the kid. I know him. I know his family, but that was real Bush League, what he did, and I was really, really happy to see him go out on Twitter and apologize for what he did. That was completely uncalled for. It warrants a suspension and definitely a dock and pay. There is no question about that. That's something that was excessive and completely unnecessary for him to do. Because you never know what could have been the physical repercussions from just a push. If Chris Paul had landed wrong way or anything like that, you just never know. No excuse. Whiplash, that too. There's no excuse for that whatsoever. And so I was really happy to see him do it. He's better than that. Patrick Beverley's better than that. He's a professional pest, but he's intense. He works hard and he goes after it. And he could be on my team any day of the week. But I was pretty ashamed of what I saw from him last night. There was no excuse for that. So it's good to see him apologize because he's a much better person than that. I can tell you, as somebody who knows him personally, I can tell you that. Having said all of that, they clearly broke him. They clearly broke him because after, being up 3-1 and then losing to the Clippers in Game 5, they stepped in the Staples Center on their home court, and everything the Clippers gave them last night, Phoenix Suns had an answer for, primarily CP3. A little Devin Booker sprinkled in there as well, and Crowder hitting a couple of threes early and what have you. That definitely contributed, but in the end, it was the greatness of CP3 who reminded them there's levels to this. And apparently the Clippers still have a few dudes that ain't on that level. And that's what happened last night. And so when you're losing, and you're losing in convincing fashion, if it were a nail-biter down the stretch and stuff happened, that would be different. But when somebody is busting your living, you know what, like CP3 was doing to all of them last night, and just answering everything they threw at them, you know, hey, that's what happens, and that's what it did. I remember, I know CP3 definitely did an acting job because DeMarcus Cousins did not connect with the elbow. But what DeMarcus Cousins missed is that the camera caught his intent. He clearly tried to hit him with the elbow and just missed. And so CP3 did a great acting job and compromised the Clippers in that regard as well. In the end, the Clippers knew that they didn't have enough, and they resorted to some tactics that are highly questionable. And it's just sad that it ended that way, but it's not that sad because everything is all right, everybody's okay, and that's where you go with it.
The Suns did not break the Clippers. They may have broke Patrick Beverley, but Patrick Beverley fixed himself by sending out that tweet, Stephen A. I agree with you. He messed up. He was, Chris Paul was going off. Patrick Beverley was helpless to do anything about it. He's a very competitive guy. His emotions got the better of him. He messed up, and then he owned it. So there's that. But I don't think they broke the Clip. Look, the Clippers are clearly better than the Suns. They were missing their best player. Kawhi Leonard didn't play, and they still were playing in a game 6. And by the way, that was with the Suns. They won those 2 games at home without Chris Paul by the skin of their teeth. They were lucky to get 2 home wins by 1 possession when the other team didn't have their best player. Come on. That's not getting broken. That's actually showing you that the Clippers are better than the Suns. They just weren't. If you take the best player off of any team, usually even the second best player, they can't win. Of course not, especially in a team that was constructed top-heavy. And all the best teams are constructed top-heavy. Any team that can get their hands on an MVP caliber max contract player does. And any team that can get 2 of them, they do that too. And if one of them isn't there, AD, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, we've seen it throughout these playoffs. If one of them isn't there, that team's not going to win, period. It was a valiant effort by KD to get to a game 7. Even though they lost 4 out of 5, it was a valiant effort for any team to extend a series without their best player. That's all that happened to the Clippers.
You were born in the Bronx, were you not?
Correct.
Bronx, New York, right?
That's right. Albert Einstein Hospital.
So was I, raised in Hollis, Queens, New York. I was born in Harlem Hospital, by the way. But here's the deal, Max Kellerman. Sometimes you open your mouth, and I wonder if you have ever picked up a basketball and played in the park. I really do. I find myself scratching my head. Have you ever physically competed on any level in anything? Because, Max Kellerman, the fact that Kawhi Leonard was injured has nothing to do with the point that's being made about the Suns breaking the Clippers. Because when you're on the court without your guy, all you're thinking about in that moment is how you're feeling. You're not thinking about, oh, well, you know what, we all right because we know we better than them if we had Kawhi. You might think about that when you go in the locker room. You might think about that today, now that you're 12 plus hours removed from getting eliminated from the postseason, as you go through your exit interviews and you have an opportunity to reflect on the season that was and that could have been had you had all your ducks in a row. But in that moment, as they were playing this game last night, trying to overcome one deficit after another, after mounting another, okay? You're not thinking about, oh, well, we're supposed to be in this position because Kawhi Leonard is here. But Kawhi Leonard isn't here. You're thinking about the fact that these brothers are giving it to you. And there's little to nothing that you seem capable of doing about it at that moment.
Fine, but let's do it another way. Okay, let's say this
another way. I mean, can you at least can you at least concede
I'm addressing it.
that what I just said is right?
I'm addressing it right now.
Go ahead.
So the Atlanta Hawks are a team with a lot of fight in them. I think it's safe to say, it's fair to say, the Atlanta Hawks now are a team with a lot of fight in them. Just because their best player isn't there in Trae Young, they don't just fold, okay, let's go home. They play through it, and they actually got a win. Now, it's at home, you're right, they had certain advantages you brought up earlier, but they did it without Trae Young. Now, if Trae Young, for whatever reason, never came back to this series, but Giannis did. Let's say Giannis was playing in Game 5, and the Hawks lost in 6 games, and they didn't have Trae Young. Would we be saying the Bucks broke the Hawks? Or would we give credit to the Hawks? Hold on. Do we give credit to the Hawks for winning a couple games without Trae Young?
Do I get to answer that, or are those rhetorical questions? Because I have the answer.
Well, the Clippers just did that. Aren't you going to credit them for winning 2 games against a team they didn't have their best player?
We're not. That's not the question. When the question was, did they break the Clippers? In other words, if you're the Clippers, how are you feeling at that particular moment? What are you going through? We're not taking any credit away from the fact that the Clippers advanced to the conference finals for the first time in their 51-year history, that they've gone farther than any other Clippers franchise has ever gone. We're not ignoring the fact that Kawhi Leonard was hurt because we know if he was healthy, they'd probably be the ones heading to the finals instead of Phoenix. We concede all of that, but the point is, if you're the Los Angeles Clippers on the court, then we got to take into account, Max, the personalities. A Trae Young, a John Collins, a Danilo Gallinari, a Lou Williams, a Kevin Huerter. Their personalities, I think anybody that watches these teams play, the personality is a little bit different than DeMarcus Cousins, Patrick Beverley, Marcus Morris Sr., guys like that.
Well,
it's
hold on.
a little bit different.
If you're going to say break, the way I take that to mean is not just you're feeling bad. It's like you give up at a certain point. You got, like, what Jay Crowder's talking about is they knew they couldn't win. At a certain point, Stephen A., it's mathematical. You know there's not enough time to come back. And that's what happened. And that's to Chris Paul's credit, not to the discredit of the Clippers. So at a certain point, the Clippers understood, damn, we don't have enough time to come back. You want to call that the moment they got broken? No, that's the moment you knew they were going to lose. You watching on TV, you knew the same as the Clippers knew. That's different than getting broken, like you've given up, like you can't do anything about it.
You're the only person I know that would have that definition of being broken.
You think broken? So what's the definition?
Let me finish. Be quiet and let me finish. I'm not talking about them giving up. I'm saying things that get you out of your character. Clearly, many, many times throughout professional sports history, not just with basketball, but with football and other sports, particularly where physical confrontations taking place, as opposed to you playing baseball and you're in an outfield or something like that. When you have competition and you are at your wit's end, there are many instances where people get out of character because they can't deal with the level of frustration and disappointment that comes with losing in that fashion. So that's what I mean by being broken, where you have deviated from your normal form of character and you've gotten a bit worse because the circumstances are a bit too much for you to take. It doesn't mean you gave up. It means that, unfortunately, you're conceding and succumbing to reality. And I'm saying to you, Patrick Beverley showed it physically, but mentally and emotionally, if you're watching this game unfold, particularly as Chris Paul just closed the deal on them last night, they were all getting a bit out of character because that's what they are. Atlanta's not like that. Atlanta's built a little bit differently. Their mental makeup is a little bit different. The Clippers, who pride themselves on being rough riders, overcoming one piece of odd after another, 0-2 deficits in the previous 2 series, you understand, got guys on their team that are known for being a bit truculent, are known for being a bit acerbic and really coming at you in different ways than just playing the game.
Yeah.
They had to succumb to Chris Paul and the younger Phoenix Suns last night, and it was a little bit much for them to take.
Guys, before we go to break, I just want to give you this note because we're talking about teams with a lot of fight. At the beginning of the season, the Suns had the 13th best odds to make it to a title. The Hawks, the 18th best odds. Unbelievable when you think about it. Nobody picking either team. We'll keep it going here. Still to come on First Take, Stephen A's response to another wild week in the media from Scottie Pippen. Shots fired at Phil Jackson and a not-so-subtle dig at MJ. Scottie Pippen has had some things to say lately. Last week, calling out KD and Doc Rivers and even First Take. Then earlier this week on the Dan Patrick Show, Pippen discussed the 94 play in which Phil Jackson drew up a game-winning play for teammate Tony Kukoc instead of himself, which caused Pippen to refuse to enter the game. Pippen with some harsh words to Patrick. Take a listen.
Have you talked to Phil about this? Because by saying a racial move, then you're calling Phil a racist.
I don't got a problem with that.
Do you think Phil was or is?
Oh, yeah.
Stephen A., what's your reaction to Pippen's comments?
I respect Scottie, 6-time champion, all-time great player. I think this is one of the stupidest, most idiotic things he's ever said or done. And You know, the way he looked in that interview, let me just say staying off the weed wouldn't be strong enough. And I'll leave it at that. If you go back, Scotty's got to recognize the fact that in this day and age, we have the tapes. We have the information. The game after that whole incident took place where Scottie Pippen refused to enter the game because Phil Jackson had drawn up a play for Tony Kukoc instead of Scottie Pippen back in the 90s, 1994, whenever it was. The day after, the next game rather, I believe the Chicago Bulls had won the game. When that transpired, Ahmad Rashad was interviewing Scottie Pippen on the court. Scottie Pippen said, "I've apologized to the team. I've apologized to Phil Jackson. It was stupidity on my part." There's video that you can find today, because I saw it, I have it. There's video where he's literally seen on video saying that to Ahmad Rashad. So now, all of these years later, 27 years later, Phil Jackson's a racist? The same Phil Jackson that coached you, that coached MJ, that coached guys like Bill Cartwright and B.J. Armstrong and others and Stacey King and all these guys. Same Phil Jackson that coached Michael, Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. Each and every single player at some point in time or another had issues with Phil Jackson. Kobe Bryant was on the record saying, "Yeah, man, he likes to coach through the media sometimes." It annoyed the hell out of Kobe. I always felt he betrayed Kobe when Phil Jackson came out with his book talking about how difficult it was to coach Kobe Bryant. But I would never, ever think to call Phil Jackson a racist. And I don't know any player, I repeat, any player who happens to be black that played for Phil Jackson that would call him a racist. And for Scottie Pippen to do something like that is just inexcusable. It really, really is. It's low. It's really, really low. 27 years later, if the man was a racist, why are we just hearing this from you after all these years? Why now?
I have a theory on that, Stephen A.
Okay.
You know,
Give me this theory.
This business that we're in, people can say part of that is selling hot takes. What's a hot take? A hot take is you thought about something, you come to a counterintuitive conclusion, you're like, I don't care if everyone else doesn't agree, I'm going to say it, right? That's a hot take. But
Does it involve you believing it, Max? Do you believe it?
You believe it. You believe it, but you know it's hot because people, if you have to think about it for a while to say, actually, I think this is not what everyone thinks. That's different than a shock jock. Remember back in the day, growing up in New York, you had shock jocks on the radio. You knew they were intentionally saying stuff to shock people because that's how they sold advertising, right? You ask, why is Scottie Pippen saying this now? Stephen A., the only thing I can say, and I don't know what Scottie Pippen really believes, but he's got a book coming out and he's got a bourbon out right now. And now he's making the rounds in media, saying things that you would expect from a shock jock. He's saying shocking things that maybe he believes them, maybe he doesn't, but I'm sure he probably believes what he says, I'd like to think, but he knows it's going to get attention, and he has two things that he's selling right now, and I just talked about them, his book and his bourbon, and maybe that's why now.
You know what, Max? That makes a lot of sense. I'm not going to disagree with you about that being a possibility. You may be totally, totally right. Let me say this as a black man. When you say racist, you better know what the hell you're talking about. And you better know who the hell you're talking about. This is a very dangerous time that we're living in, and it's more divisive than it's ever been as far as I'm concerned. Max, I can sit up there and talk about, okay, this is a racist act, or this resembles racist behavior. Notice how there's a dichotomy that exists. There's a line that's drawn in the sand before I character assassinate a person by calling them racist. Just because you white and you happen to disagree with me or make me unhappy or we don't vibe in terms of our thinking does not make you a racist. And as a black man, I think it's incredibly important that I say that. I don't view everybody that's white that disagrees with me or that's hurt my feelings or that I have a problem with as racist. I don't think that, and I don't think that Scottie Pippen should be playing for a man winning 6 championships, never uttered a word against Phil Jackson in all of those years he played for him. And then when Phil left the game and came back and went and coached the Lakers, and Scottie Pippen was on television giving analysis, never called them that. But 27 years later, again, when you may be trying to sell a book and a bourbon line or whatever it is, all of a sudden the man is racist. Now, Max, you know me, bro. I don't like Phil Jackson too much because of what he did to my Knicks. I still haven't forgiven that man for stealing money from the Knicks the way that he did, for sleeping on the damn job with his bad hips and everything else in between.
I'm still as coach of the Bulls.
Phil Jackson, the coach, I love. Phil Jackson, the coach, I love. Phil Jackson, the coach that was interviewed, that's the 11-time champion, I love. My problem is that they weren't with the Knicks. I'm a Knicks fan. So to watch the job this man did with the Knicks is unconscionable, okay? And I have to sit up here and get away from my vitriol towards this man because of the job that he did for the Knicks, to come front and center and remember that I am a black man and a human being, and I'm looking at a white individual in Phil Jackson who has a history with the Knicks and had a lot of friends there, black and white, has friends throughout the league, black and white, and a lot of people think he's an a-hole. This is what they say about him too. You have friends and you have enemies. No one has called him a racist.
You know what else?
But Scottie Pippen just did. After 27 years. That's unconscionable. It really is.
What was such a bad look for Pippen was that Kukoc hit the shot. Like, coach draws up a play, the dude hits the shot and wins the game, and you're complaining that it seems selfish at the time. And in retrospect, when he's talking about it still and blame it, it's like Stephen A. back in the day when the Celtics would be accused of the same thing because Bird and McHale were the best. Bird and McHale were the 2 of the 5 best players. Bird was the best player in basketball. McHale was a top 5-6 player. Mm-hmm. Like, that has nothing to do with race. That has to do with the fact that they're great, great players. So Phil drawing up the play for the better shooter who then hits the shot to win. Right. It's a bad look to criticize him for that.
It's a bad look. Yeah, what you got to remember, he sat down before the play was executed. So he didn't know. He probably regretted as soon as Kukoc hit the shot because he knew he had no leg to stand on. But he sat down before. But you saw the person in his ear while he was sitting there talking to him. That was Bill Cartwright, former Knick, former Chicago Bull, champion, former head coach, and whatever. And he's always had a voice issue. You know that, Max. His voice was really compromised, stuff like that. Bill Cartwright walked into that locker room after Scottie Pippen refused to enter that game and just jumped all over him with tears. Tears. He was very emotional, calling Scottie Pippen to the carpet. You let us down. He didn't use the word betrayal to my memory, but he basically highlighted you let us down. Mm-hmm. You weren't there for us. You sold us out. You gave up on the team, which had a lot to do with why Scottie Pippen ended up apologizing. And this is what I know. This is what I know about the Armstrongs, the Bill Cartwrights of the world, the Stacey Kings of the world, the Michael Jordans of the world, and others. I do know this. If Phil Jackson was a racist, we would have heard about that a hell of a lot sooner than 27 years later after that play for Tony Kukoc. Scottie Pippen doing what he just did, and I respect the hell out of Scottie Pippen. It hurts me to say that. But that is one of the most ridiculous and incredibly unfair allegations to throw at a former coach. To do that to any human being based off of something from 27 years earlier like that is just low.
Especially when it's to protect your own ego. When it seems like it's to protect
we do have a heart out, and obviously Scotty's a friend of the show. He's always invited if he wants to come on and explain himself more.
Greatest players ever.
We'll leave it there. Stephen A., one of your favorite subjects when we come back. Dak is back. Cover your ears, Mr. Smith, because when we return, we're talking America's team, because the Cowboys